Well, welcome everyone to the Better Every Shift podcast, webcast, well, whatever you call it. We're live here. My name is Aaron Zamzow. I am the host of the Better Every Shift podcast. With me, as always, is my co-captain, Janelle Foskett. Hello, Janelle.
Hello, great to be here.
Well, it's a very exciting day for us because not only are we live, but we also have Chief Bashoor with us, coming from a much warmer climate than where I am. And he's used to doing these things live. So Janelle and I behind the scenes, we're kind of hyperventilating into a paper bag, and Chief is over there, not even batting an eye or sweating. So welcome, Chief Bashoor. Thanks for being here.
Thanks. I'm just wondering what those things are below your sleeves there that's covering your arms. Long sleeve stuff I don't get.
Yes, there's snowsuits and winter jackets are still here in Wisconsin, but up in Florida, yeah, you're 90 degrees, and you look good, Chief. And that's going to kind of introduce or bring us to why we're here today. We're here to kick off Wellness Week. We're here to talk about something called the Healthy 10, and again, you and I have had some great conversations along the way about health and wellness. And it's great to have you as our guest for this. And real quick, just for those that don't know, Chief Bashoor he's the executive editor of Fire Rescue One, fire chief. He's been a public safety director, Highlands County, Prince George's County, fire EMS emergency manager. You have really done the gamut within the fire service. But what a lot of people don't know is you look really good now. You're very fit, you're very healthy, but you have had a journey with your own health, correct?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it was two specific things that occurred that kind of drove me there. One was in West Virginia. My wife actually was reading a newspaper one day, and I saw a picture. She was holding a paper, and I looked over and I said, "Who's that?" And I can say this because it's about myself, right? I said, "Who's that fat guy on the front of the paper?" And she rolled it over and said, "That would be you, hon." And it was just a realization that I honestly didn't recognize myself. And I got to a point where that was kind of the weight loss beginning. And then the second epiphany, if you will, was as chief in Prince George's County, I began to hire what I called the young punks. And I didn't want those young punks to outdo me. Now, they outdid me, but I gave them a run for their money. And I would PT with them. I would go to the gym with them. We'd go on jogging missions together. And end of the story, basically, I've lost almost 90 pounds and gotten myself to where I'm in the healthiest state of my life.
And it got you to a point where you can really help us talk about what we're gonna do to help define what is healthy for the fire service, the Healthy 10. But before we do that, Janelle's got some housekeeping stuff for us. We want some participation from everybody listening today. And Janelle, how do they do that?
Oh, just a reminder that as with any of our webinar events, you can interact with us. Just type your question into the question box. We will try to get to as many as possible. Some of them we'll get to as we're talking. Some we'll save till the very end. But we want to hear from you, so please reach out.
And today we mentioned the Healthy 10, and we'll define that a little bit better. But this is all part of First Responder Wellness Week, and we're very happy to kick this off. I still don't believe that they allowed me to do a live podcast with this. And Janelle, you are the expert on what we are trying to accomplish with Wellness Week and what our goals are.
Yeah, so First Responder Wellness Week, this is our first time doing this. It's a big launch. We're doing it across all of our verticals: Police One, EMS One, Fire Rescue One, the Lexipol site. Really what we want to do is get everyone focused on the health and wellness resources they need. So much like the firefighter safety stand down, where we focus a whole week of training activities and efforts around whatever that theme is, we want to do the same thing for wellness. So this week, every day is focused on a different theme, with the overarching theme of the resilient responder, because all of these factors are connected to resiliency. So Monday, today, is physical fitness. Tuesday is sleep, Wednesday is nutrition, Thursday is mental health, and Friday is healthy coping strategies. So we're going to hit on some of this in what we talk about today with the Healthy 10, but please watch all this week for information, resources, videos, more webinars. We have 5 webinars this week across sites, so check it out. And I'll put something in the chat here as well, so you can have the link to where you can get some Fire Rescue 1 resources and also some resources from Lexipol.
And that's a perfect segue into what our agenda is. First, we wanted to make you aware of just the Wellness Week concept. And then, Chief, you and I are going to define what is a healthy firefighter. And one of the principles that we've kind of come up with behind the scenes is this Healthy 10 concept. We have some great resources, so please, you can click on them, and then we'll take some questions on it. And Chief, really the idea behind this Healthy 10 started with, you and I and conversations that we've had with people throughout the country presenting is, you have 2 people here. And I'll give you an example. And this is kind of what spurred my side of this was, you got somebody who's 10% body fat. They look very, very healthy. They work out, but then they go home and they drink. They haven't had their cancer screens. They don't wear their gear properly. They don't clean their gear. They don't have good emotional relationships. And then you take someone who's maybe 20 or 25 pounds overweight, but they understand their numbers. They get their annual medicals. They get their cancer screens. They are working out fairly consistently, but they go through little slides here and there. They eat well. Looking at the calendar, you're going to say one is healthier than the other. But we know the reality is something totally different. And that's kind of where this Healthy 10 came up with. How can we measure health, and what kind of guidelines and framework can we give to firefighters going forward to try to shoot for and strive for and use as a guide? And that goes back to your story, right? Like, you looked in the mirror, and at that time, not only were you overweight, but what other health issues, if you don't mind indulging a little bit, like,
Sure.
were you taking care of your health at that point?
Yeah, no, not really. And I think Janelle must have put you up to that calendar reference, because there are some calendars out there for those that are familiar with the past. So the one thing I think we need to recognize Lexipol and Gordon Graham and that whole the Cortico piece, and just thank them for allowing us to host this and bring this to the forefront, if you will, of a live audience to hopefully make a healthier firefighter at the end of the day. So part of that weight loss journey wasn't just about less food, because that was part of the problem. But another part of the problem for me was sugared sodas and just carbonation in general. I'm not an alcohol drinker, so alcohol wasn't an issue for me. For a lot of folks, that can be. And when you really do some of the research and you understand what those grains and what the sugars and all those things do, I think I can say it was a McDonald's soda. So I would have a McDonald's Coke, if you will. And I did some research and found that one of those 32 ounces was about the same as a can. And that had the equivalent of 7 tablespoons of sugar in each one of those. And I would have 2 or 3 a day. That was just what I did. It was on the run. It was that fast food thing, and it was quick, and it did what it did. So just in those 3 sodas a day, 21 tablespoons of sugar. And that didn't take into account anything else I was doing. So even though I didn't drink, I didn't have the alcohol as an issue, I did have sugar as an issue. So not only about reducing food, but about reducing sugar intakes and increasing water intake. So to the point today, I'm pretty much, water and tea is a pretty boring drink lifestyle, if you will, but water and tea is what my repertoire is. And of course I have a electrolyte replacement after the gym. So your statements there on the screen are perfect from a perspective of what I'm going to say right now, and that is that there is not one plan. There isn't one plan or one nutrition tip I can give people or one exercise that you can give people. You've got to do the research and figure out what works for you. because every one of our bodies reacts differently. All three of us across the screen right here could go and have a baseline done, and then we could drink the same stuff and eat the same stuff, and all three of our body for weeks, and all three of our bodies would react differently to it. So you have to find out what works for you and your body, and make sure that you're not just relying on pills and just relying on the latest, greatest exercise plan out there. There's a balance that you've got to find. You got to find what works for you. And that's what ended up working for me. I had to do a lot of research. Functional fitness is a big part of that. I know you're going to talk a little more about that later. And like I said, here we are today, almost 20 years later, and down 90 pounds and holding really well.
And looking good and being able to inspire others. I think that's the other part of that. And that's actually part of this list, is to, have even, we take into account attitude. You talked about lifestyle and how that can play into it, and how different things work for different people. And Janelle, that kind of comes into one of the projects that we have on Fire Rescue One real quick, is our survey. Do you want to mention that real quick?
Yeah, I think it's just important to consider how stress and wellness overall plays into the bigger picture of health, because you can be really fit, you can be, at your optimal body weight, body weight percentage. But if you're super stressed and are having some mental health struggles, you are not at optimum health. So, and this is the big theme of our annual survey this year, is the kind of confluence of events, this perfect storm that leads to stress amongst firefighters. And so some of the things we'll be talking about today connect to this. I just wanted to make a quick note about that. We're going to close the survey tomorrow. So this is the last chance to get in there. I'm putting the link to it in the chat right now for everybody. But check that out. We'll have some good resources in the next few months as a result of what we learned from the study.
Hey, before you jump in, Aaron, there is a comment that came in, and it is an important comment. And this is actually how I started in the fire service, as a dispatcher. And sometimes we talk about functional fitness and we talk about what firefighters do and all those things. And that is the focus of the conversation here. But we also have to remember our dispatchers and the mental health of all the things that go along with dealing with every one of these calls coming in. It's important for us to remember that too. It's not just about putting the wet stuff on red stuff. It is about the entire envelope of what we do. So thanks for that question.
Yeah, and I think, and we'll address that within these healthy 10. And that's kind of where, again, we talked about what's a fit firefighter, because, the calendar and the physical body is one thing, but then what's going on behind the scenes. And if you don't know, that's a real detriment to your own health. Now, we'll dive in with number one, where we talk about functionally training, but everybody stay tuned, because we're not just going to talk about burpees. We're not going to talk about, we're going to give you some things that you can walk away with it. Because right now, half the people listening are going, oh, he's going to talk about burpees, and he's going to talk about protein, and he's going to talk about, all those things that he likes to do. By the way, I hate doing those things. I don't like to do them. I know I need to do them, but that's a whole nother topic. It's about meeting you where you're at and giving you some usable things. And hopefully you could take, number 4, number 5, number 6, walk out the door and go, yeah, that dude was goofy, but he's got some good things that I can do to improve my health. And we're going to dive in with fitness, because it's uber important. All the research points to working out consistently helps with stress management, number one. It also helps with cognitive function, which some of us, like myself, need all the help we could get. But then it helps with performance. And number one is to train functionally. Now, functionally for a chief is a little different than it is functionally for a frontline firefighter, right, Chief? But it's uber important even as an officer, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a 6-day-a-week gym guy, but I'm not in there for 2 hours a day or I'm in for my 1 hour, get in and get done what I need to get done. And absolutely, exercising the mind is a big part of this too.
And stress relief. I always tell my chiefs, I ask them every time, I go, are you guys working out? And sometimes it's yes, sometimes no. And I said, look, I don't ask them because they're going to have to hoist ladders. I ask them because they got to deal with me. That's the stress of it. But going to that frontline person, whether even if you're a dispatcher, functional fitness, has been kind of, the term has been thrown around a lot. And I found one of the best ways to define it is to just look at, and this is coming from Mayo Clinic, and it's training the body for activities performed in daily life. And I think, whether you're a dispatcher, a chief, a firefighter, you have to look at, all right, what am I doing? What am I exposed to? And how can I improve my performance based on what I traditionally or what I functionally have to do each day? When you look at the fire ground, we lift, crawl, carry, pull, hoist, drag, climb, slam, all that involves core work. And then we have to repeat that. Then you have to throw heavy gear on there. With a chief, your stress levels are high. You're going from meeting to meeting. You're dealing with people like myself. As a dispatcher, you may not be very active at certain times. So you have to find ways to integrate in functional improvements. And, with us in the fire service, as firefighters, I always say mobility is really key. Core is really key. Full body strength is really key. But as a chief, as you just said too, consistency and training, the mind is also really, really important with that. Anything you need to, you think to add on that part of it, Chief?
No, just that I want to kind of draw the line in the sand without it being a line in the sand, and that is that sure, when you get to be a chief, you're not going into burning buildings as much as you were. You maybe not at all. Some chiefs probably haven't been in a burning building in a long time, and that's a whole nother issue for a whole nother podcast. But the reality is you cannot expect your folks to perform at their optimal level or to take it serious if you don't take it serious. Yeah. You've got to make sure you're on the top of your game just as much as your folks do. It's equally important, regardless of whether you're functionally in the burning building or not.
Well, I have a question about that as well, because if you're a chief and your fire ground days are done, you might not need to be doing the lifts and the hoists and the carries, but the key is, at least take a walk, do something where you can, at least work on your cardio strength. Like, we don't want to suggest here that everyone needs to be doing these types of functional training. If you know that you're not going to be doing a pull ever again in your life, for example, but still it's important to make sure you're still doing some sort of fitness activities. Yeah.
Consistency is the key, and intensity can change with position and also where you are with your level of fitness. So if somebody's listening to this and they're like, hey, I'm on the couch, man, I lifting, crawling, carrying, I just got to get up. Well, that's your first step, right? Like, that's it. And then get consistent with it. So functionally training, I think we all agree, we got some great points with that. The second thing is to hydrate with water, because I know who's listening and I know exactly what everybody's saying right now, right, Chief? Everyone's going beer, coffee, whatever, but not saying you can't do those things. It's just hydration is so vitally important for thought process, cognitive function, fitness, joint lubrication. And what a lot of people don't know is that staying hydrated can reduce your chances of sudden cardiac arrest and stroke, which, last I checked, are what kills us, right? Especially in Florida, right, Chief?
Yeah, and the whole diabetic part of the sugars, really important that people pay attention to that. Make sure you're seeing a doctor on a regular basis, get what your baselines are, and it's the other part. I appreciate Janelle's admonition of, we don't expect everybody to be doing the sledgehammer every day. We also don't expect everybody just to go out and cut sugar right away. You got to understand where your body is, and water is certainly a big part of it. And sugars, whether they're natural or otherwise, they're important too. You got to find out where your body is.
Yeah, and with hydrating, here it's cold weather. Where you are, it's 90 degrees. It's important regardless. And so the rule of thumb, I've been working with athletes a long time. You've been working with firefighters and athletes a long time. One of the kind of the documented rules of thumb is half your body weight in ounces of water each day if you can. Some people look at me, I probably go, oh my God, that's a lot. But if you get somewhere close to it, and the idea is, think more about hydrating with water. make that improvement. That's something too, Chief. And I know like when you started you mentioned sodas, you were doing a lot of sodas. Now you do waters and teas. The tremendous improvement in just how you felt, right? Probably was.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and the carbonation that's in a lot of that, while it may not add weight per se, it does bloat an individual. It's just a fact of what it does. So when I started having more water and more tea, it is unbelievable how much better not only you feel, but how much easier doing some of these exercises, even like Janelle said, taking a walk, just taking a walk is no longer stressful. So for me, it all started with that realization of the sugars and the sodas, and then the carbonation. Those two things together made a huge, huge difference.
Well, so many non-water drinks are dehydrating. You think that you're just because you're taking in a liquid that it's hydrating, but it can actually be having the opposite effect.
That's part of it. And the other part of this is when you're better hydrated, you actually have more energy because every metabolic process within the body needs water. So somebody's like, hey, I don't have enough energy. First thing I working with clients over the years and firefighters is start drinking more water. Your joints will start feeling better, but your energy levels, and it's actually documented. There's research there. Someone could Google this. I'm sure they are right now, thinking whether I'm full of crap or not. But staying hydrated can reduce your chance of sudden cardiac arrest, help with energy, help the way you feel, and especially if you're substituting out all those sugars, right, Chief? You're gonna start feeling better. And as Janelle said, in some cases you're drinking the wrong stuff, and it's a detriment to you.
You also need to make sure after especially after an intense exercise where you've sweat a lot, or it doesn't have to be exercise, but you've been at a fire scene and you've sweat a lot. You've seen the products we put on the fire trucks, but you need to be making sure there's an electrolyte replacement in that repertoire of stuff. Not just water. Make sure that after those heavy workouts or after you've been sweating, you're getting that electrolyte replacement, and you'll notice a huge difference in how your body responds just in that by making sure that you're getting that.
And how your body recovers as we all take a drink of our water. I noticed that, Janelle. So we talked about fitness, staying consistent with fitness, hydrating. Again, that's if somebody's looking at this saying, Zam, where do I start? I would say start drinking with water. And I think Chief said too, just start moving more. And Janelle, just go for a walk, right? So we got some things that everybody listening can do. The next thing is get your annual medical. Chief, you do this and you have for years, correct? How many people are not doing this in your eyes, and what would you tell them to change that?
Well, a lot more people than people realize are not doing it. They'll say, yeah, I got my physical. I went and did the physical. And I can tell you that our fire department physical used to be, it was an internal joke, if you will, because it was just a doc that was passing people along to pass them along. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the perfunctory, your blood pressure's fine, move on. You need to get in and have the workups done. There's a question in our questions here about 2 LODDs that were posted today, and they were both cardiac related. And the question is, how can we make improvements in that? Well, all of this is about making improvements in that and helping to prevent it. And number one in determining that for yourself is getting a checkup. I can talk about weight loss, and I can talk about drinking water and electrolytes and taking the walks and doing all those things. But if you haven't been to a doctor or you haven't had one of those scans done that looks at the early detection for artery blockages and the different things, then you're doing yourself a disservice. And I think more people than we care to admit, and certainly more people than admit it themselves, aren't getting this done. And if you go to any of the conferences, I know we have several coming up. My conference circuit is pegged out here, Janelle, coming up. I got to get you those dates, by the way. That at each of those conferences, there's typically one of the vendors there doing free scans. So if you have some trepidation about it, you're a little bit, you don't understand, or you don't have the money for it, if you get to one of these conferences, get to one of those scans and get it done. And you will be amazed at the stories, and they're not artificial stories. Real life people who have caught real life issues in one free scan they got at a conference. So how do we keep this from happening? We get that baseline done one way or the other.
Well, I think we all know someone who went to one of these appointments, had no symptoms beforehand, none.
Yep.
And they caught something early. You know, I'm thinking obviously about cancers here. You're catching something and it gives you that leg up. You now are in such a better position to fight whatever that is. You know, Billy Goldfeder has told his story about prostate cancer. You know, all it took was that one scan for him to get, you know, that one test for him to find out, and it changed his life. And now he's here talking to us about it, 40 plus fire, and sharing that information. And he's also been reminding all of us, which we so appreciate, about this downloadable handout you can take to your doctor. Most doctors, you know, they're not super well versed in the fire service and the risks they face. And all you have to do is show them this handout, and they'll realize, you know, all the different potentially hazardous conditions, you know, that firefighters in all the time, and it'll spark that step to, you know, get a couple of these tests done that they probably wouldn't have otherwise.
And is that in the show notes for them, Janelle, so they can?
Yeah, we have it as a handout. You can download that handout, print it up, take it into your doctor, put it in your notes if you have a portal with your healthcare provider, so that any of your doctors have access to this document.
And you're never too young to start. The other part of this is you want to spot trends. So if you're starting, you know, new to the fire service, get these numbers down. And if you can spot something that's going awry, they could start making changes, and obviously can direct the right resources to that. But that's the biggest thing, is you need to take control of this. You need to do this, because you don't want your health hazard to become your crew's health hazard or my health hazard. And that's something that I've heard all around the country as I present, and it's spot on for this. First Responder Center for Excellence has it, 40 plus fire, IFC safety. Take this, even if you are doing a department handout, or if you're doing a department medical, take it and make sure that they are doing everything they need to be doing. So great resource with that. And then, so number 4 here, as we continue down this journey of the Healthy 10, eat according to your goals. If you eat high sugar foods, if you're constantly having processed foods, you will be feeling and performing that way. You know, high sugar, we reach for that a lot because we're looking for energy right then and there. But, you know, Chief, I think this is one of the biggest changes you had talked about you made, is what you put into your body and why, right?
Yeah, not just what, but how much. So, you know, we hear a lot about, and there wasn't a lot of explanation about it when this first kind of came up, talking about micros and macros. And, you know, we're not going to get into a lot of that. But I will just give everybody the 5-cent tour here is that, you know, macros are the carbs, fats, and proteins, and micros are the nutrients and vitamins. That's all it is. And you've got to look at where you are with all of those pieces and understand that it's not just about what, it's about how much. And, you know, I've got lots of tricks that, I'll give you one, but for lots of tricks that help people in losing weight. And one of them is putting trash on a plate. And they look at me like, what the hell are you talking about, Chief? You crazy. I said, no, just try it. When you're eating and you're trying to lose weight and you just, you know, you fill up your plate. And I'm reminded of the comedian that has at the buffet he goes to, and he piles the plate up. I'm not going to repeat what he says in his comedy routine, but he piles the plate up. And that's what we do in general, right? Is we fill our plate because that's number one. We took the plate and grandma said, eat everything that's on the plate, and we just keep eating. And, you know, I tell people, when you get to the point, the first time you're hungry, first of all, slow down. You can put the fork down in between bites, all those kind of different things, but slow down. But when you really feel like you're done and you need a little help, put some trash on the plate. And more than one person has come back to me over the years and said, you know what, I thought it was kind of hokey at first, but I did it. And it made all the difference in the world because I wasn't going back to that plate that had trash on.
Yeah.
So then if I could just keep it from going back to the buffet for another plate, we'll be okay, right?
Yeah.
But lots of tricks for it. It's not just about what you put in, it's also about how much.
Remembering that food is your fuel. If you put bad gas in your trucks, you're going to get bad performance. Same thing there. And we just had Chief Salk on. He said one of the things that he would recommend is to serve on smaller plates in the firehouse. Yep. Get rid of those darn platters. There's some science behind that. And then lastly, I have to say this from my mom. She was right. Eat more fruits and vegetables. Right, Chief?
Right, absolutely. And my mantra every night: seedless red grapes. That's my wine for the world. I have seedless red grapes every night. That's my final before bed snack, if you will.
And it helps fill you up too when you're eating things like salads. You're going to get full faster and less likely to go back for seconds on some of those other foods.
And if you're in a firehouse and you're cooking in a firehouse, the one suggestion I would say to that is, look, we're not saying like if you got away from the traditional firehouse meals right away, you're going to get, trust me, I've been the fitness guy for 15 years. I know what you're going to get, but have a salad, have vegetables as an option for those that you're cooking for. And that would be the one plea I would have for those that are cooking in firehouses. Have more fruits and vegetables. Yeah, Chief?
I want to, if you can go back to the one slide, I don't think we don't have food on the stove on here, do we, anywhere, Janelle? In the present. Okay, so food on stove.
Great resource.
I encourage you folks to research that, look for that. I'm actually going to speak with them first week of May, doing a little speaking about how this all manifests in his program, in Jonathan's program. But some great resources out there. You just got to find them.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to taking control of your health. The one thing that we all have is we all have a cell phone, and we have a lot of resources there. And whether you want to learn how to cook, it's there. YouTube, great for that. Jonathan Tate has a great program called Food on the Stove. There are actually some very good healthy chefs probably within your fire department. Just reach out to them and don't be afraid to make these healthy changes. That's the other part of this, and we'll get more into that. But before we do, let's go to number 5. This is something that when you probably first joined the fire service, Chief, sleep, everyone just said, we sleep when we can because, we're on 24 hours. But now the research is telling us that's fine. We understand that. You got to get better at sleeping when you're off shift also, right?
Right. Yeah. And, you think about it's a little bit different world, but all you could do is think about the DOT standards for truck drivers.
Yeah.
Right. They're required by federal law to get a minimum amount of sleep in between shifts. Yet we don't do that in the fire service. We don't have anything that requires us, who's going to be rescuing those truck drivers out of the wrecks or the different situations they get in. We don't have anything requiring us to do that. And I think we can learn a lot from that DOT mantra, if you will. I'm not suggesting we should have that. So no, please don't take that away from this. I'm not suggesting we become the DOT sleep police. But sleep is absolutely important. And, there are things in the stations. We used to have, and Aaron, I appreciate you making reference to back when I was in the fire department. We used to have the Claxtons, right? The really hard that was the Claxton, and now it's replaced by the much softer and quieter, voices of the alerting systems. And that's all part of shocking your system. Ours was a shock to the heart and a shock out of sleep, and it made it harder to get back to sleep. So I think we've made some progress in the industry. Unfortunately, I don't think we can let dispatchers sleep because while they're on duty, because you got to answer the call. I know that we were given the opportunity to take naps as dispatchers as long as other people were up. But anyways, absolutely, sleep's critical. We've never paid enough attention to it, and I'm glad to see we're starting to now.
Yeah,
I just want to point out. I was just going to say real quick that on the podcast, this has been one of the most consistent themes that's come up on several podcasts. Battalion Chief Dina Ali, Fire Chief Tim Sundelbach. I swear, it seems like almost everyone has mentioned sleep as being just the critical foundational part when they're starting a wellness, fitness, whatever it might be. And the story I just want to relay really quickly is Chief Ali, she mentioned how younger generations coming into the fire service don't have the same stigma attached to sleep, where in previous generations or years, people would see it as a sign of weakness. If you said, hey, I need to go take a nap, I'm going to go home and rest for a while. Like, we just had to be go, go, go all the time. And like, who's got time for a nap? And it's just like, it seems so simple, but to just embrace the idea of taking a nap and putting yourself first and getting some rest as like this eye-opening concept, it's kind of funny almost, but it's so great that we're actually starting to recognize it. And so I'm just so glad she mentioned that. And I'm also going to put in the chat for everyone, Dr. Sarah Janke has done some great research into sleep for firefighters. And a book actually that Tim Sundelbach mentioned on his show is called Why We Sleep. And he said it changed his life. And if you know him, you know he didn't sleep very much
at all.
So hardly at all, you know, just working all the time. And so this is a great resource I'm going to put in the chat for everyone.
Great minds think alike. Janelle, I was just going to say the same thing. This has been a huge topic coming up on Fire Rescue One, on our podcast, on the Better Every Shift podcast. And I think it's one that, you know, I'll leave it at this. Just because you're in shift work doesn't mean you shouldn't think about it and focus on being better at sleeping. You know, it makes it's when you say it out loud, it sounds odd, but there's sleep hygiene, there's ways to integrate in, and there's ways to get more out of our sleep. And we as first responders need to focus on that. So number 6, Chief, we're moving along. We're doing pretty well, but this is one, of course, this is kind of what we started about, is managing your weight and your body fat percentage. And this is, again, a personal thing, right? I will say why this made the list. First off is the more you weigh, the harder it is to do the job internally. There's a lot of systems in place. It's harder on the joints. It's harder on your internal organs. There's some great research coming out of University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, where, look, we're firefighters. We get the job done, and that's never really a question. And as I've gone around and started to talk to people, and I know you have, Chief, look, you have 2 firefighters, one that's in shape, one that's maybe 20 or 30 pounds, and there's a task at hand. They're both going to complete it. They're both probably going to complete that. But at what stake, at what detriment will that have on the body? And research shows the heavier you are, the harder it is to recover, the harder it is on your joints, the harder it is on your organs. So that's why this made it. As far as what's a healthy weight for you, Chief, I think you have some good insight as to that and kind of what you went through.
Yeah, so I recall several conversations with some overweight firefighters that I had, and they were self-described bulls in the china shop, right? I hope that's water in that cup you're drinking there, Aaron, right?
It is, yeah.
They were self-proclaimed bulls in the china shop. They could take down any wall. They could, anything I asked them to do, Chief, I can do it. The sergeant, lieutenant, whatever rank it was I was at the time, I can do it. And, my retort to them was exactly what you just said. I would say, I have no doubt whatsoever that you can take that wall down for me. My question to you is, at what expense is that going to be to you? And that became kind of an eye-opener for a lot of folks, that we do have to look at, and I don't like BMI or body fat percentage as an indicator, as a sole indicator, if you will. But they are things you need to look at, and you need to make sure that you're cognizant of where you are with that, and your department might have a limit. So you got to know what that limit is. You got to be within this range, or this is the limit you can be. You've got to know that for your department. In Prince George's County, we used to have a BMI percentage that you needed to target every year, that there was a top and a bottom. And you just needed to know that and be able to work towards that, to be able to meet the standard, if you will. But not every department has that, and it isn't the end all be all of the process. Back to the whole functional fitness piece, this is much more about being able to get the job done and lowering the stress on your heart. You said the organs, lowering the stress on your heart and taking that extra weight off of what your heart has to overcompensate for. I mean, that's all what this is about. And,
Yes.
you know, you've got urescue.com down there, which is a website that I started, which kind of focuses on the whole piece of this. This isn't just about physical strength and nutrition. It is about, you know, mental toughness and moral focus. And when I talk in terms of the personal success tetrahedron, and the base of that tetrahedron is service, because that's what we're all here for. We're not here for anything but service. But that service, and Grandma Jones and the 10 chairs, people have heard me talk about that. Grandma Jones is everybody that's out there that we deal with, and the 10 chairs are the 8 people who die in fires every day in the United States. The 9th chair is the firefighter or EMS professional or dispatcher that dies in the line of duty once every 3 days. And the 10th chair is the one who dies at the hands of suicide once every 3 days. It's all part of building that tetrahedron so that you can get the job done. And it takes much more than just the food that we're talking about. It takes that mental toughness and that moral focus. And we can look in the press every day, and we can look at lapses in each of those, whether it's moral, you know, moral focus issues or just decision making that's gone. You used the word awry, and I was going to applaud you for that. I don't think I've ever heard you use that word before. The decision making that has gone awry, and that's what urescue is all about, is finding the right personal and professional balance to be able to get the job done and ultimately provide that service.
And going back to like your own body weight, that helps you do that better. It helps you perform.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Better. And it takes stress not only off your body, you know, physically, but mentally too. I think, you know, that's the one part of this. And going back to this isn't just about being able to do push-ups and burpees, right? Which everybody knows I love talking about, but it's more than that. It's more about, how does this fit into your entire well-being? How does this fit into your life as a firefighter, fire chief, and as a father outside of the fire service too?
And all of those things, with Janelle was talking about the sleep just a couple minutes ago, it's all part of that. It all fits together in that tetrahedron.
Well, can I just real quick, Aaron, just going back for 1 second. I think sometimes it's hard to make decisions for ourselves because it's harder for us to prioritize. But if you put it yourself in the perspective of, or you think about it from the perspective of, like Mark said, could you rescue you? What about your crew? Could your crew rescue you? And if we're not going to do something for ourselves, think about doing it for them. Because if we're making it harder for them to be able to successfully rescue, if you know we were in a Mayday event, sometimes I feel like that's the final, you know, flip the switch, you know, for folks is, oh, if you're not going to do it for you, think about the people it impacts around you.
Yeah, and that's all part of exactly it, Janelle. That's perfect. I mean, that's all part of what I was hoping to drive home with, that is for you to look introspectively and understand that it's not just about you. There are people who have to rescue you. And I ask them to look at themselves first. And so while it may sound like a functional, could you rescue yourself, pull yourself out, it is that, but it's also the moral and the mental part of pulling it out. So I appreciate that parallel, because that's exactly what it's all about. It's not just us. We're all in this together.
And to add to that, I had a great conversation at one of my seminars once about someone saying, hey, what do you think about, you know, RID operations for a firefighter that weighs 300 or 400 pounds? And I think that opens up this whole idea. Well, I understand it's really difficult to recruit in the fire service right now, and that's a whole nother conversation. But I understand the idea behind how do we save that person. But if we really truly care about them and save them, we would get some of that weight off of them. And because that's a detriment to the rest of the department and to those people that, as Janelle and both you said, Chief, you know, you now I have to deal with your issue and being really, really heavy. And we could
number
go on
one,
and on.
you're exponentially increasing your potential to have a problem, and then our potential to have to deal with your problem by continuing to carry around those poor habits.
Yep. And I think that goes into our next one too, believe it or not, into the cancer initiative, where we talk about having your dirty gear. Because your gear, and so number 7 is clean your gear. Clean your apparatus, clean your cab, clean your equipment. Post-fire decon is essential to reducing your risks and your crew's risk and your family's risk of cancer. And so now it really plays into, hey, I haven't checked my numbers. I'm 40 pounds overweight. Well, you're now putting other people in jeopardy. I don't clean my gear, so now you're putting other people in jeopardy. And this is one that you can't ignore the research, right, Chief?
Yeah. And, I'll say this, and this is a shock thing here, but one of the quickest ways to lose weight is going to be to get cancer. So let's not make that be what we're doing. So it's not just about, I appreciate you 100%. It's not just about the food now and the nutrition and the exercise. It's about making common sense decisions. And I'm as guilty as the next person for having grown up in an environment that glamorized being dirty. And I can't tell you the number of newspaper clippings I have where I could recognize myself. And, what was it? It was the black stains all over the face and the gear with the dripping soot off of it, the things that we describe as salty. And I would not only get right back on my fire truck like that, I might throw it in my trunk and take it home and then have the wife and kids in the car with me. And of course, as soon as they went, what's that smell? They're already exposed at that point. Once they begin smelling that's all part of the exposure. So yeah, it's no longer a badge of honor. It shouldn't be. And we need to be making the common sense decisions to get ourselves rinsed off and do the best we can to keep the cabs clean. I know everybody can't do the whole clean cab concept. I get it. Do the best you can. And just simple rinsing and getting that stuff brushed off of you is going to go a long way to reducing your risk.
And Janelle, we have some great resources. You've been working hard behind the scenes, and I have to say thank you to you, Janelle, because you've developed a lot of stuff on this, dirty helmet syndrome page, and had a lot of conversations. And you understand. You looked at the research and you went, "This doesn't make sense. Why are you guys not doing this?" So I applaud you for putting together these resources, and I think they're referenced there, correct?
Yeah, just put that link in the chat as well. This was a special coverage series we did not all that long ago, but I was just so impressed by all the writers that spoke up about this and said we have to change the way that we think about this. We cannot continue to glamorize it because we're just getting ourselves and others around us sick. So we have to put an end to that.
So great crew drill would be to go through some of these resources and talk about this. Obviously the Healthy 10 is going to be a great crew drill, but break it down even further. Let's talk about the cancer risks and what we can do as a crew and individuals, because that leads into another one of our Healthy 10, which is work on emotional resilience. Now, Chief, you had mentioned a kind of this topic as we were talking about weight loss and managing your health and You Rescue You. And I think this is one that really is one that's you're passionate about, correct?
Yeah, I mean the whole piece about emotional resilience, and we deal with a lot of bad stuff, and we not only we see a lot of bad stuff, we just have to keep rolling, because if we don't answer the next call, who does? That is unfortunately the truth. So we've got to get ourselves in a mindset where we're able to, and it's a great graphic there that talks about self-control and the social supports within the department and being optimistic about things. Everything isn't bad. Even though we're painting a bad picture right now in what we're talking about, it's to help you be better. So be optimistic in what you do. the ability to, I'm just going around the clock here, if you will, on what's on the screen in front of folks, but the ability to solve problems, you've got to be a problem solver and a thinker. The problems don't solve themselves unless everything burns down and just goes away. And we've seen that happen before. So we've got to be problem solvers, being emotionally aware, and not just emotionally aware of yourself, but of others. Look around the room and make sure that when you see someone who's in trouble, that you do something. The whole mantra of if you see something, say something. Well, for me, it's if you see something, do something. If you see somebody that needs support, get them the support, whether that's your department EAP program, whether that is your health and wellness staff. If you have an office that does that, again, every department's a little bit different. And then this self-belief, believe in yourself and your ability to do the right things. I've said before, we are not an entry-level business here where, I guess I'm going to say we're not meant to be an entry-level business here where you can come in and think about minimum wage working conditions. We are the front line of public safety, and our folks have to believe that they can get the job done, and all of this comes together. And at the end of the day, the sense of humor is where I had to be able to use that in developing myself as a firefighter, to be able to not only laugh at the situations that laugh at the situations that I had to deal with, but also be able to laugh at myself and recognize that I wasn't going to be, I wasn't the end all be all. None of us are, and that we need to be able to do all of those things and think about resilience in terms of dealing with all the situations that we see every day. And we talk about the LODDs. You talk about the factory in Pennsylvania that just blew up, and the 7 people that died in that, and the school shooting today with at least 6 people dead. Our responders all went to all of those situations. Our firefighters, along with police officers and the dispatchers, everybody dealt with that. We've got to be looking at each other and make sure that if we see something, we do something about it to take care of each other.
Yeah, and I think a really important thing that we have to note here is we're not going to be able to stop experiencing trauma. That's part of the job. There's going to be negative things that happen, but we have to create balance with the positivity. Studies show that if we focus on the negative, then we're only going to see the negative. It wires our brains to just see things from a negative perspective, which is why we have to be intentional and really, really try to think about positives in our life as well. So yes, the trauma is going to happen. We're going to see terrible things, right? But if you pause for a moment to think about what you're grateful for, something in your life that's going really well, that helps your brain have a more balanced ability to deal with the trauma. And really, that's what we mean by building resilience. You're preparing your brain to be able to process these things that are coming in. And it's pretty amazing what's happening in our brains without us ever knowing it, which is why we have to be so intentional.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great resources out there, and I want to point out the one that we got there on the slide about the Cortico. Download the Cortico app if you don't have that. It's spelled just like that. Download the Cortico app, and you'll really be amazed at the amount of resources that are out there from that, just to help you with this whole piece, health in general, but specifically the emotional resilience.
I like to call it the Jedi mind trick sometimes, and I say that with jokingly, jovial, but and this is something to try at the table. You do this with your kids. Is once you start going down this rabbit hole of being negative and talking about all the bad things, you just start to mention some positives, think of some positives, and you watch how things around you change. And I have sometimes challenged with that, but I think that's part of this. Is obviously we're going to be exposed, as you were saying, Chief, and Janelle said, try to find positive ways and healthy ways to reframe and deal with it and talk about it. So emotional intelligence is very, very important for our health, along with two more things that we want to address, and this comes back to the cancer initiative. We just talked about washing your gear and wearing clean gear. The next part about this is wearing your gear properly and wearing it, period. Chief, how many times when you, and I don't want to say when you first started, but I can even say when I first started, nobody was wearing it during overhaul. And a lot of times we weren't wearing them on automobile fires, car fires. So that's changed, but we still got a ways to go.
Yeah, you wanted to say when I first started, we had sponges in our mouth instead of SCBA. I know.
I wasn't gonna. Well, didn't the horses have the sponge?
Yeah. So there are a couple pieces here. One is, are you doing air monitoring at your scenes? Do you have the capacity to do that? If not, you should be. And we don't need expensive hazmat meters to do that. There are simple 4-gas meters out there that'll take care of 90% of what it is that's a concern. You shouldn't be taking off the SCBA until that's been, those limits have been reduced to where they're no longer a toxic environment. And you're not going to know that without doing some kind of monitoring. You're right 100% about vehicle fires and dumpster fires. We never used to wear SCBA on those fires. And now it is a standard way of doing things and should be. But also, like you said, wearing them. How many times people aren't wearing the SCBA, the waist strap? It's just like I hear police officers say, I don't wear the seatbelt because I can't get out of the car quick enough if I got to chase somebody. Well, okay, well, think about that next time you roll over and get thrown out of the vehicle, that's why you didn't have the seatbelt on. It's the same thing with SCBA waist strap. And they say, I don't have time for that. I got to get into that fire. I got to get in. That waist strap is hanging down. And I want them to think about that the next time they get trapped in a scenario where those waist straps that are dangling down get snarled up in something and we're no longer able to pull them out because they're entangled in that incident. And it also, using that waist strap, takes that weight off of your back. And that, that's a big part of making sure you're wearing it right.
And that goes back to our health, right? It goes back to A, for the cancer, B, for injury prevention, and C, just for being apt to for rescues. Because we've touched on all of our numbers here, except for the last one, and I didn't want to shorten that message of wear your gear, wear it properly, wear it when you should. But I think it comes back to, if you're not wearing your gear, if you need to lose a couple of pounds, if you haven't worked out consistently, if you're not doing your annual medicals, if you're not drinking enough water, work on improving every single day. Get better every single shift. And, not everybody's going to be a model for the calendar. And we're not saying that you need to be. We're saying take one small step forward. And I'm a big YouTube success guy. I love watching these videos. And Denzel Washington has a great video out there. He says, I knew when I would fail and fall forward, because I would learn from it. And every single time I would fail, I would just keep going forward. It's forward, it's steps. There's times in our health and fitness journey where we might be up on weight, we might be down on weight, we might be not healthy with our nutrition. The key to all this is start moving forward with it, right? And don't give up on it.
Pick one thing today. Pick one thing today and start today.
Yeah, don't try and conquer everything all at once. Or I get into this mindset myself, all or nothing thinking, but do one. Start by drinking water. Start by going to bed earlier, whatever it might be. But just because once you do those things, you're going to see that positive reinforcement, the positive results, and then you build confidence to try the next thing.
And that's what this is all about. Get better every day. And Janelle, I'm going to piggyback on your comment, because you and I have had some great conversations behind the scenes. You are okay, I need to do this, and you got a spreadsheet out. You got Monday, you're going to do that. Tuesday, you're going to do that. If it's a half moon on Thursday, you do this. And finally, right, I looked at you one day, I said, just start drinking more water. Just pick one, and you looked at me and you're like, I'll see you next week. And then that was it. But you're exactly right. And Chief, if this webinar, this podcast makes an impact on And in order for it to make an impact on you, if you're listening and you're like, my health is horrible, Zam, what do I do? Pick one of these. Start drinking more water today. Then next week, work out 3 times a week, 3 walks. And if you're in great shape and you haven't gotten your annual medical, go make that dang appointment. And if you're not wearing your gear properly, do that this next call. Whatever you do, start making progress and take those around you with you. And that's about, that's what we're all about. You know, that's why, Chief, that's why you do what you do. That's why I feel honored and privileged to be able to talk, because that's what I stand for. And Janelle, was the whole idea behind this whole thing. So with that, Chief, thank you for your insight. Janelle, awesome. We got some questions that we'll deal with. Anything else you guys got?
Got a few questions coming in. We did have a couple requests. If you could go back to slide 9 for just a second, just to make sure we've got a few things there. Yeah, there's a couple quick tips here. Well, the personal plea was from me to stop using the term smoke eater. I think that's so essential. But at the same time, if you think about the term smoke eater, it just underscores why SCBA is so important. Who wants to think about the smoke actually going into your lungs? It's a terrible visual. It's terrible to think about. And that's something we still see it in, news sites will literally call firefighters smoke eaters, and we will not use that term on Fire Rescue 1. We do not want to glorify that term. Anything else on this one, Aaron, before we move on to questions?
No, I'm actually trying to look at some of the questions on here, and this is great. Thank you, guys. Thank you, by the way, for everybody who attending. I would really highly encourage you to share this with your crew if you could. Share this with other members of the fire service. And then, yeah, what do you got for questions?
We have one question about vitamins and supplements in general. I was curious what your take is on that, especially for folks who feel like maybe they can't get all those vegetables, for example. How do you feel about supplementing with vitamins or other supplements?
Chief, what do you do? Yeah, Chief, what do you do on that?
So I will be completely honest with folks. When I started the weight loss journey, I did use a weight loss supplement to help curb the appetite. And what I took away from that is for folks to go back to what we just talked about. Pick one thing. That one thing for me was about weight loss at the time. It wasn't about heart health. It wasn't about functional fitness. It was about weight loss. And I wanted to jumpstart that, and I used those vitamins, over-the-counter stuff that is available everywhere, to be able to start that process. Certainly, as time went on, I determined that I did need a kind of a one-a-day kind of thing. I will say, though, that I had a very popular one-a-day vitamin I started taking, and I got sick within 2 days, and I stayed sick every day I was taking it. So I stopped taking that one-a-day vitamin, and I got better. I don't know what that was all about, but it goes right back to what we've been saying from the beginning, is that there's no one system, no one diet, no one plan that's going to work the same way for everybody. You've got to figure out what works right for you. Someone else did ask, and Janelle, I'm going to go ahead and piggyback on you there. Someone else did ask about yoga and what we thought about yoga as far as being able to help with sleep. Anything that's able to help you focus, I go back to the mental toughness and moral focus, anything that's able to help you focus is good for you. To be able to focus your, whether it's sleep, whether it's performance, and if yoga is what does that for you, fantastic.
Yeah, I highly recommend yoga and mobility work for numerous reasons. One is the better you move, the better you will be able to perform and the better you will feel. And yoga does that. It also helps you try to connect your mind and body, which we are, honestly, I know I'm very horrible at. And then just to piggyback on supplements, Chief, I think you hit it. It depends on what your goal is, but I like to say things like protein shakes and vitamins and creatine, all these different sports supplements. If you have a crappy diet to start with, you're literally peeing your money away, because you need to focus on getting good quality calories first, hydrating, and then, a multivitamin may help with that, but you have to do your research on it, because you can get it, you can actually get too much too quickly, and you can start to have some nausea related with it. But my whole take on supplements is that don't let supplements get in the way of you creating healthy nutritional habits to start. So good protein.
Not the end all be all.
It's not the end all be all. And it's sometimes if you don't have that solid foundation, all you're doing is adding crap to the top, and you know what happens? It falls back down.
Yeah.
So build your foundation first. Great question.
We've got a really good question that just came in. How do you get the 15, 20, 25-year firefighter on board with this mindset? Where do you begin to change the mentality to get into a healthy lifestyle after potentially decades of not focusing on health and wellness?
So I want to jump in and take that because I had a personal experience with that as chief with a firefighter who had exactly that scenario, the 15 to 20 year firefighter who had not been able to get in shape, may or may not have taken it serious, and got to the point where they were unable to pass the department physical. And I don't think it was that they didn't want to have a healthier lifestyle, but they were one of the ones who believed they were that bull in the china shop and they could do anything and take any wall down, and didn't understand why I thought it was a problem. And we had to literally have a one-on-one mentoring session with that individual and asked them to understand one thing first, and that this wasn't just about them. So to the question of how do you get that person, number one, you need to get them to understand this isn't just about them. Because as we talked about the could you rescue you piece, if that person were to go down, would the rest of his crew or her crew, would they be able to pull them out? Would they, because their heart didn't function well because of all the fatty tissue around the heart, it caused it to seize up. Now their crew is put into position to have to be endangered to be able to pull them out. Well, yeah, that's what we do, Chief. Okay, but go back to it's not just about you. If you weren't in the condition you were in and you were a healthier you, would it be easier on your crew if you did go down? And it was really an epiphany moment for that person when they understood that they weren't in this alone. And if they won't do it for them and their fellow firefighter, then do it for their family, whether it's a wife, a significant other, children, to be able to be around longer for them. This isn't just about you. So hopefully that helps the person that needs to have that discussion with someone to jumpstart that discussion. And that's number one, make sure they understand it's not about them. And number two, understand just take one thing at a time, start today.
I just have to piggyback on that too, Chief. You're exactly right. We all need to start thinking about, the family members. When you said that, if someone's family comes to the firehouse, in my mind, I look at that and go, that's why I'm working out. That's why I need to stay in shape, because I don't want to let those kids down, or I don't want to look at my crew's family and say, my own fitness, my own lack of going to get my own numbers, let them down. And we had this conversation at a firehouse table, and we were talking about manual medicals being mandatory. And someone said, well, I don't want someone knowing my own health issues. And I said, they're not just your health issues. They're everyone's at this table, especially if you don't deal with them. And, when we talked as a group like that, I think, as you said, it's very impactful. And I hope that that's one of the things that, along with the Healthy 10, that people are taking from this. And, I think that's a great one to kind of end on. Janelle, you have some great resources for us here, correct? To end it, and what do you got?
Yeah, we just want to remind everyone that if you missed anything here, you can watch the on-demand version here at this URL. And then there's also, please, I encourage everyone to follow Better Every Shift as well. We did get more questions that we didn't get a chance to get to, but we will try and cover all of these questions in a follow-up article. So watch for that. We will publish that soon. Erin and I will talk about that on Better Every Shift going forward and let you know when that is live. And just also a quick reminder that there are 2 handouts you can download here. One is just a quick lineup of the Healthy 10, and the other one is the Healthcare Provider's Guide to Take to Your Doctor.
Chief, thank you so much for being here. Anything else to add? A final parting words of wisdom?
It's not just about you. Take one thing at a time and have a great day on purpose.
On purpose. I love it. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Again, the Better Every Shift podcast, you can reach us on the website at Fire Rescue One. Most importantly, we want you to learn something, do something, and share something to make you and those around you better every shift.